planning or schedule requirements in FIDIC contracts. So this presentation doesn't directly depend on FIDIC because FIDIC has certain implied requirements which only a planning expert or a planning department can understand how to make or produce it. So let's go into the presentation to understand that more. So why planning requirements matter? It ensures employer visibility on the progress, and it forms the basis for monitoring the delays and entitlements. It will be the benchmark. It supports proactive risk management. It is mandatory for claims and variation assessment when 60% of the construction claims are directly UOT claims. So in that case, scheduling plays a major role in claims. So what are the key books that are governing the plannings? So let's see most common books. Red Book, it is used for construction based on employees' design. Yellow Book, plant and design built kind of constructions. Silver Book is for EPC or turnkey projects. So based on the risk allocation, the planning requirement differs. So contractors' planning obligation. Contractor has to prepare the program and he has to logically link the activities. He has to find the critical path. There should be regular updates and submission to the engineer for his review and concern, and provide narratives and S-curves. So if you see that our S-curves and narratives are part of the FIDIC direct requirement, no, they are not part of the direct requirements, but still to give the output what is required by the FIDIC, we have to follow these S-curves to monitor the progress. So what are the clauses linked to schedule? Subclass 8.3, it refers to the program. Subclass 8.4 gives a detailed explanation on extension of time. Subclass 8.5 says what are the impacts when there are delay due to the authorities and what are the entitlements for the contractor. Subclass 8.6, rate of progress. So here to measure the rate of progress, you need an S-curve. You have to monitor the productivity. So subclass 1.9 or 5.2, that depends on the employer's supplied info. So this info will be necessary for the contractor to start their activities. So basically these are constraints in the schedule. Program submission requirements. So there should be a proper sequencing, duration, critical path, milestones should be as per the contractual requirements. Resource, many FIDIC requirements, FIDIC-based contracts which we have come across, the particular terms and conditions are specific about the resource loading and interfaces. What are the interfaces you are going to face with other contractors and what kind of work calendar you use. It's a 7-day calendar or a 6-day calendar. And what are the weather assumptions you have taken in the schedule. So program approval or review. So the engineer reviews whether the program submitted is as per the compliance to the contract, and he gets the consent from the employer for the approval. So that doesn't relieve the contractor's obligation just because it is approved, because the contractor is the main stakeholder who is going to monitor the project on real-time basis, and he is the first-hand information who controls and execute the project based on the schedule. So if any comments received from the employer or the engineer has to be addressed by the contractor and should be resubmitted. So what is the program narrative and basis? This is very important. The program basis has to be explained, and what are the assumptions taken to arrive this schedule. Usually an assumption log will be maintained. And method statements. What are the method statements has been followed to understand the duration and the sequencing of the activities. What are the procurement plans? So that you know what are the long lead items which we are depend on the subcontractors or the vendors to deliver it. And what are the risk allowances or the basically floats which are available. Planning is different at different stage. It always depends on the visibility and the available inputs. At tender, the contractor makes a schedule, so he has a certain visibility and detaility. So tender schedule is the basic program which usually being signed along with the contract. But after the award of the contract, the baseline will be prepared and submitted. Once the baseline is approved, baseline will form the benchmark of the project measurement till the completion or even completion of the project. So any delays that has to be updated, and there should be an understanding between the contractor and the employer and the engineer that a recovery program has to be submitted if any delays. And we have a separate video for the difference between the baseline program, revised program and recovery program. So progress monitoring requirements. So that should be looking at schedules, critical path method updates. See, FIDIC doesn't require or asks directly for these kind of requirements in the general terms and conditions, but most projects that opt for FIDIC-based programs will have these requirements in the particular terms and conditions, because if you don't have these requirements, you will not be able to manage large projects like S-curves, manpower histograms. So you have to have the visibility on the mobilization of the manpower, whether the mobilization of the manpower is as per the requirement of the schedule. Delay event log is the most important thing that has to be maintained side by side, so that it will be the input for the delay analysis and the EOT claim later. And always the schedule should have an integration with the risk register. Most contractors do not follow this. Like major contractors, MNCs follow this, and major projects have requirements to follow a risk register. Float and time contingency. Float is generally shared in the project, and who owns the float is a different kind of debate. So let's not go into that. So critical path drives the entitlement always. An engineer may intervene if the delays continue. These authorities has been given in FIDIC, that if the delay is prolonging, the engineer has the right to take action against it. Extension of time linkages, that mere an extension of time doesn't give the contractor the entitlement to the EOT. So that should be a cost effect demonstration. Delay analysis methodologies are not directly mentioned in the general terms and conditions, but still we have to follow some of the commonly used delay analysis methodologies such as planned as built, time impact analysis. Impact as planned is a very basic analysis, but still if you don't have any other inputs in very smaller projects or non-complex projects, you can go with IAP also. So acceleration and mitigation. So I have mentioned a lot of time that mitigation is not an option. Mitigation is a mandatory requirement for the contract. And acceleration is mentioned in the FIDIC. Yes, it is mentioned in the FIDIC that if it is then a request from the employer to accelerate, the contractor has to accelerate, and they're eligible for the bonus or the incentives. In case of delays, the contractor has to mitigate their own delays, or unless the delays are tagged, who is responsible? The mitigation is still lies on the contractor's obligation. Records and evidence for planning. So planning is not a standalone requirement or standalone operation. It depends on the inputs from all the projects or all the departments around it, like daily logs, photographs, inspection records from the QA/QC, what are the delivery status from the procurement department, delay communications between the employer and the contractor. So many factual evidences are involved for the delay analysis methodologies. Program requirements always keep this delay analysis requirement in mind, because 9 out of 10 projects delay. So when you start a program, you should have in mind that delays are inevitable and how we are going to mitigate it by recording it and communicating it in a very proper manner. So best practices, like it's just a brush up. So we need a robust baseline. You have to maintain the CPM logic throughout the project. So monthly delay analysis is going to be very difficult, but one who is doing a monthly update, it will be very easy for them to do a monthly delay analysis. There should be a transparent communication which solves most of the issues between the employer and contractor. So maintain the evidences as backups. So you may not know when you end up in dispute and when you require these documents. Thank you. If you are interested or if your project requires any claim support, please do reach us. And if you want any individual upskilling requirements, please refer our courses. And if you want to empower your entire team, project team, or you are entering into a large project and you want an understanding of a contract's claims and delay analysis, reach out to us. We can also support you on the corporate trainings. Thank you.